really dates back to 2013. And so I was fortunate to go to work at a very early stage software company. And although we grew incredibly fast, we had a competitor who came into the market much later and then eventually won the market.
Welcome back to another episode of Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge. Today, my guest is Dan Spearing. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me.
No problem, no problem. Really appreciate you being here. So tell me what it is you do.
Yeah, and so I founded Align Software back in May of 2022, and our focus is to help go-to-market teams better execute by having a deep and shared understanding of their best fit customers.
Okay, and how do you help them do that?
Yeah, and so today, as you think about B2B SaaS and as you think about how companies go to market, our belief is that a lot of the norms and a lot of the strategies we employ to grow our companies are rooted in kind of a different time where 10, 20 years ago when we were selling perpetual software, the majority of the value of the agreement was basically captured when the initial deal was closed. And what's changed with software as a service is now for us to recoup that revenue, it often takes 3 to 4 years. And so as a result, a lot of aspects of SaaS has changed. And so there's been the advent of customer success to help customers get more value out of their technology investment. But what still hasn't changed is ultimately our go-to-market strategy and how we optimize our sales and marketing functions.
It's some of the things that I noticed when reviewing information about you is your software helps people find the accounts that are going to renew and expand and bring in more inbound leads. That's obviously a really important thing for businesses, especially on a subscription basis, right? What is it that you're doing different? What's the differentiator?
Yeah, and a great question. And so today, if you were to think about our go-to-market strategies and how we think about that process of acquiring a new customer, most of the software that we use today is really optimized for this idea of a closed won opportunity as being the success metric. And so what happens is that all of the advertising dollars we spend, all of the different playbooks we have really get us to the place where the deal closes and then we celebrate. We're not really thinking about what happens with that customer post acquisition. And so the thing that we're doing that's foundationally different is we're looking for indicators of strong product market fit within the customer base. We're looking for examples of where particular customer cohorts have a lifetime value that is 3 or 4 or 5x greater than other customers. And then we use those insights to start to build lookalike models so that our clients are able to be much more intentional with the types of customers that they target and eventually acquire. And so what we see is that in the subscription revenue business, really what we're focused on is building a snowball. And that snowball really begins with a happy customer who is deriving value from their investment, they're renewing, they're expanding. And so we want to help go-to-market teams focus on those customers that are going to be much more successful with your.
So what brought you to this point in your career where this is the offering that you have?
Yeah, it really dates back to 2013, and so I was fortunate to go to work at a very early stage software company. And over the course of about 7 years, we were able to kind of 10x the size of the business. And although we grew incredibly fast, we had a competitor who came into the market much later and then eventually won the market. And although we were incredibly well financed and although we were first to market, we were the de facto standard, we ultimately lost it. And this competitor went on to go public. And through the course of that 7 years, I really fell in love with the company. I fell in love with our, the innovative solution that we had. I loved our customers. It was a great journey for me, but it pained me. It hurt me to watch another company come in and really kind of steal our launch. And so during that time, I was doing a lot of win-loss analysis to understand what they were doing differently. And through that, what became very clear was that they were much more targeted in their go-to-market strategy. And they were really focused on solving a very particular problem really for a marketing buyer persona. And that focus is really what allowed them to double down on not only the go-to-market strategy, but also build a better product for solving a very particular use case. And so once I left that organization, I ended up going to another company that was going through massive amounts of growth and saw a lot of the same patterns. And so then it became clear to me that, hey, there's an opportunity to potentially change the way we go to market so that I could help people like me who are, fully invested in committing to help building great companies.
That's interesting. So it sounds like the competitive battle between the two companies when you were working for the other one kind of ignited a passion inside of you for this.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, without a doubt. And so, as you can imagine, working 60 hours a week for, 6, 7 years, those people in which you're going, who are on your team that you're going to war with, over time, you end up developing really close relationships with them and a lot of empathy for them. And when you see your company struggle and you're forced to go through layoffs, and you see your friends, who are very capable, kind of, be forced to move on to other organizations because of our missed opportunity, it hurts. And so, yeah, without a doubt, for me, this is a very personal journey, and it's really about helping individuals create more successful careers. And that really starts by helping build better companies.
Yeah, it's that's awesome because not too many people have that kind of passion and connection to, their team members. I've been through multiple startups that failed, and a lot of people that are just like next, 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 but I'm with you. Like when you put your blood, sweat, and tears into something and you work long hours, I don't understand how you can't have that kind of passion for it. It's just strange to me. So what makes you get out of bed in the morning?
Well, I mean, on this note, I think over the years throughout my career, some of the observations, I've been someone who's carried a quota for maybe 15, 20 years. And what I found on my journey is that although it feels great to, for example, overachieve, our quota and to crush it, I always felt that I was also searching for kind of a sense of meaning. And that sense of meaning for me was really tied back to how can I help not only my organization, but also, kind of my friends and family who I'm working with. How can we win? How can we make a difference? And that's really what motivated me back, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And that desire to make a difference and that desire to win is still something that motivates me every day.
So during your career, what do you think is the most challenging thing you've had to deal with?
Man, there's so many different challenges that I feel like I've had to face and overcome at different stages of my career. And so, like if I think about it from a traditional sales perspective, one of them, one of my learnings and observations is that one of the things that attracted me to the sales was the idea that, hey, I had a quota, and with a quota becomes something that's very measurable. And hey, if I do X, Y, and Z, there's these things that happen for me. And what one of those challenges that became clear over the years was that the quotas that get assigned to individuals are very much arbitrary numbers. And I've had situations where this was true working at a really large telecom provider where one year out of 3,000 reps, one year I was in the top something like 1%. And then the next year I was in the bottom 1%. And through that journey, what became very clear to me was that I probably wasn't one of the best reps, of the 3,000, but I probably wasn't one of the worst ones either. And a lot of it was just a function of the opportunity as well as the quota that happened to be assigned to me in that given year. And so, one of those kind of observations is, especially in sales, where we have tremendous amounts of pressure to hit a revenue target. If you miss a few quarters, potentially you're out of a job. And so it's being able to be comfortable with that constant pressure, but also understanding that your self-worth is not tied to your ability to hit an arbitrary goal that someone set who has very little understanding of the opportunity within a particular territory or customer base. And so it's more about how do you kind of distance yourself and your identity from your work? I mean, that's been one of the biggest life lessons and probably one of the toughest things for me to overcome personally.
So, let's say within your company, you've just promoted somebody to a leadership role. What are the three best pieces of advice you could give to a new leader?
I'd say, I mean, there's a couple different things. One is the number one thing that comes to mind is I think the best leaders start by understanding the goals and objectives of their team, of each member of their team. And so I think the leaders that I've worked for and the leaders that I've loved are ones that take the time to understand almost like a career plan and understanding that this is one step on my journey. How can myself as a leader be a conduit to help you achieve that next milestone in your career? So I'd say that's probably the number one thing. Number two, I think that the best leaders are ones that have a deep understanding of themselves, and through that self-awareness becomes the ability to more objectively see not only their strengths but also their gaps, and the ability to identify your strengths and weaknesses will allow you to surround yourself with a better team that will help you drive much more success than you would otherwise. And so that's probably number one. Number two, and then I think finally number three is and this is a common theme for me, is the leaders that gotten the most out of me are ones that probably put the relationship with me above maybe the needs of the company. That's probably something that might be a little bit controversial, but yeah, the leaders that I've done the best work for, they truly care about me, and we're actually working together where I'm helping them hit their goals and numbers, and likewise, they're helping me not only be successful, but also do the things I need to do so I can make it to that next level.
Yeah, you said something, working together. I think that's something that some new leaders forget. They say that person's working for me, but really you're working together. I know it's a cliche, but like there's no I in team, right? So, and they say that for a reason, because too many times people like that, they think, okay, now I'm the leader, so I get to tell everybody else what to do. When the reality is people are in positions for a reason. They were hired to do a certain job. And it's kind of like, look at like an automobile. All the parts work together to keep the car moving forward or backward or whatever. It's just to travel. And I think a team is the same thing. Like, especially like on a tech team, you might have like, I worked one place where it was like, I'm trying to think of the word here. It's like almost like a hit squad, right? Like we had a multiple, like three developers that would be part of the team, and then a DBA that'd be part of the team, and then a business analyst. And then so the five of us were responsible for a group of tasks, and we had to all do our jobs, and then things progressed. But when someone wasn't doing their job, that had to be fixed, just like a car. If your radiator's not working, your car's going to overheat and you're not going to run. So I think it's important. That's a great point, though. The working together, you have to look at it that way, or you lose the people. They're not interested. So I got a strange question for you. Do you drink coffee?
Yeah, I started drinking coffee at 36 years old. And I'm actually it's almost like a dry January thing. I started drinking matcha. And so I'm like 24 days deep in it, but I did order some coffee from Costco, believe it or not, just a few days ago. So I'm probably going back to it. I'm falling off the wagon.
Well, it's like something I've done too. I've been like a big like caffeine addict, and my wife got really concerned about it because she started hearing about people, keeling over from having too much caffeine. I mean, probably the most recent one you hear about is Panera Bread and their charged lemonade. It has like 390 milligrams of
Jeez.
caffeine in one lemonade, and I mean, I kind of get a kick out of it because people are all in an uproar, and I say to myself, but I thought we're supposed to manage our intake of caffeine and not expect the company to do it. But I found this product, though. I mean, you mentioned matcha, and I found this product called Magic Mind, and so it's like just a little tiny shot that you drink in the morning. And I tend to drink it alongside my coffee, but I don't have as much coffee anymore. And it's one of the things that it's done for me is it's kind of leveled out my day. So instead of having like a crash in the afternoon, I stay equal. And the stuff's made with matcha. It has nootropics, adaptogens, and so it really helps your mental focus. And so what Magic Mind has done for listeners of the show is they've created a deal. So they have subscriptions, and you can get 50% off the subscription in the next 10 days. Just go to magicmind.com and use the code tech leadership, or you can also just, to save yourself the trouble having to type in that code, you can just go to magicmind.com/Jan gaining technology. And yeah, you can even pick it up if you want to try it, you can pick it up at Sprouts as well. But I just thought I'd ask you about that because it's an interesting, you'd mentioned, then you mentioned matcha, which I thought was interesting because it's in the product. It's a great product. So I recommend my listeners give it a try. And you as well, if you want to.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
so
I definitely, in terms of in the afternoon, I tend to be a morning person, so I start my work days around 6:30. And so by about 1 or 2 o'clock, I find myself kind of dragging a little bit. So yeah, something like this would be really interesting. I'm gonna check it out.
yeah, we're similar in that respect because I also start my work probably around 6 in the morning. I work with a lot of East Coast companies, so it's just natural to be working at that time. And then when I see 2 o'clock roll around, I know they're going home now. Uh, but so what do you see where do you see yourself in 5 years from now?
And so from a company perspective, we're in a place where we're just about to start our first round of funding. And so there's a group of about 6 of us, 7 of us that are building the company at this point. And we have a handful of customers. So we're very much still in that space of finding product market fit. So we're very fortunate to have the customers that we do who we're helping with ultimately their go-to-market strategy and driving more efficiency into it. And yeah, as we kind of build this out, there's still a lot of uncertainty. So 5 years feels like an eternity. I feel more comfortable about 3 years from now. We're looking to have anywhere from kind of 10 to $15 million of ARR, and be kind of aggressively building out a team and helping I don't know, I think there's over just in MarTech alone there's over 12,000 vendors. So these are the types of companies we want to help scale and grow more efficiently.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that. It is hard to even see where you're going to be in 5 years sometimes, especially when you're in a growth stage like you are. That you never know where that's going to take you. Your software development. How did you get into software development?
And so I was really fortunate. I'm kind of dating myself. Going back to 1999 is when I got my first job, right out of college, and I started working at EDA, it was electronic design automation software company. They help like Intel build chips, and so I was fortunate to start my career there, and have basically been in the software space even before SaaS existed. And so at that time, we were selling perpetual licenses. We were shipping boxes with CDs in it through the mail, and people would install it on their servers. And so it's kind of home to me. It's what I know. It's what I love. And long story short is because I've spent such a long time in the industry, it's fortunate to have a lot of friends that we've kind of built along the way who have felt the same kind of problem that we're working on solving. And so, yeah, we have a small but mighty team that's passionate about kind of helping kind of solve this problem.
Yeah, the passion part will carry you quite a ways too. Like we talked about earlier, not too many people get to build that kind of connection. It sounds like you have with your team and that you care about them. I think you mentioned earlier about, but people that get the most out of you are leaders who care about you, and empathy is a huge thing. But what do you think is, say, a tech leader's biggest, like, what are and I'm talking from an interpersonal side of things. So like
Mhm.
dealing with their team, dealing with other executives in their team. What would you see as like their biggest struggle that they might face?
Believe it or not, but my biggest challenges in my career, and I'm probably not that much different from your average, tech exec who's just basically an old person. Um, I'd say our biggest problem is probably our own. It's being able to be self-reflective and being able to understand our egos and how our egos have a massive impact in the decisions we make and how we operate the business. And so it's boils down to that concept of self-awareness. And as I think more about that concept of self-awareness, I especially our company at our stage, the success or failure of our company largely depends on it's obviously not just decisions that I make, but it's a collective team. And I think this is where the values, having well-defined values and being mission driven and having a deep understanding of, why the organization exists and from whom, I think are all things that help us get out of that egocentric mode where we're making decisions for the wrong reasons and are often more about ourselves and kind of promoting our own views or opinions about kind of a market or a problem. I think that the companies that have the most success are ones in which have a deep understanding of their customers and are truly there to serve.
Yeah, it's like self-awareness in an individual takes them a long way. And I think if you can develop that kind of on a corporate level, having self-awareness. I mean, when I worked years back as a CTO for a restaurant delivery service, think like Grubhub and Uber Eats, and we were one of the first ones in the country that was nationwide.
Wow.
And one of the things we talked about constantly was what differentiates us, and we always revisited our values over and over and over again to make sure that we were exhibiting those values to our staff. And interestingly, after like being there for about a decade, during the recession in 2008, started laying off executives. But prior to doing that, most of us were on like a salary, like a really low salary, but then we would get most of our compensation from bonuses. Well, we cut bonuses first. We limited how much the bonuses could be for the executives because we were trying to keep as much staff as possible. And
Mhm.
when I looked back at it afterwards, I realized that that was just an extension of us living out our values that we kept telling. And honestly, I think it's why the company ultimately ended up surviving, because we didn't just talk the talk, we walked the walk. And while I was one of the ones who was laid off, there were three of us. We let go the CFO, the human resources director, and the chief technology officer. And I think it's funny now that I'm thinking about it as I'm saying that, they laid off the person who helps them handle their staffing, the one who handles the money, and the one who handles the technology. I'm not sure how they did survive, to be honest, but they survived. They were eventually bought up by Grubhub for like $100 million,
Wow.
and moved. The owners have moved on to other things, but I'll never forget that experience because these were three guys, young guys who were entrepreneurs, and they had done every job in the company except for mine. Of course, they didn't know anything about technology, but they'd done every job in the company. And so when they would say, "Oh no, that can be done," you knew it could be done because they've lived it. So I found that to be an interesting experience. But one of the things that I learned from that was to be transparent with your staff, right? What are some ways, like for you, you're running this company, what are some ways that you are transparent with your staff about good things and bad things?
Oh man. Yeah, there's a lot of different things that come to mind. And just to touch on one of your points earlier, those values, to your point, there's something that I think can dramatically help a company and they can also hurt a company. And so I worked at organizations, just to kind of build on your earlier point, where there was values that were up on the wall, but no one actually lived by them, no one acted by them. And it created this huge amount of almost hypocrisy and individuals who were incredibly frustrated because the organization agreed to this type of behavior and these values, which were not being lived and demonstrated. And so, anyways, I just go back to your point. It's so incredibly important that those values are revisited and we're actually holding one another accountable to actually live by those through our behaviors and actions. In terms of your kind of follow-up question, I'm kind of drawing a blank all of a sudden, Mike. What was that? I'm sorry.
Just like how you're
Oh,
transparent with
yeah,
your
yeah. Okay.
staff, both good and bad.
Yeah. And so I think, I mean, at a startup our size, it's pretty easy to do just because, with 6 people and we have We have a couple of weekly calls, and at the beginning of every, I call it a team call versus a company call because we're so small at this point. But it starts with going through the pipeline, and it starts with talking about each deal and what the challenges are. And yeah, we're at a stage where there's deals that I thought were going to happen, and unfortunately they go sideways. And so telling the team that, hey, we lost this, and to actually double click on this idea, a lot of our fundraising is really a function of and the timing of our fundraising round is a function of our ability to make traction in closing deals. And there's folks working nights and weekends on this project, with no compensation, just with a small amount of equity, based on the idea and the promise that eventually this will become a viable business, and one in which we have millions of dollars of funding, and these folks have full-time jobs. And so for someone like myself, where I'm kind of owning the go-to-market and the sales function, there's a massive amount of responsibility that I have in terms of executing, because every deal that goes sideways, every opportunity that we're not able to close, is simply delaying the time in which these individuals will be able to quit their day jobs to actually work on this full time and contribute to building something. And so I feel like it's at a minimum, I owe them complete transparency, since they're being generous enough to donate their kind of nights and weekends towards building this.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great answer, actually, especially if you have people working, for an equity share. Being transparent with them lets them know, which direction things are going and whether they should continue to ride it out or, not. It's completely up to them, I'm sure. But this has been a great conversation. I mean, I really appreciate all the input you've given me. Where could my viewers connect with you?
Yeah, and so a couple different places. One is on LinkedIn. My first name is Dan, and last name is spelled Sperring. You send me a connection request, I'd love to connect. And then you can also learn more about Align software at alignicp.com. And so yeah, we have some best practices, as well as some case studies that you could read through. And you can also contact us through the site.
Awesome. Well, all that'll be up on the screen. It'll also be in the notes and the description of the video, so nobody has to hustle to write it down. But again, thanks again for being here. Truly appreciate your time.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, honored to be on the show. Take care.
All right. Thanks for everyone for listening to Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge. New episodes every Wednesday, streamed live on LinkedIn. Hope to see you next week.